Thank you. Usual strategy committee meetings in March. Welcome to our community board members, Lloyd, John, and Jeanette. And apologies, Gavin, Councillor Oliver, and Councillor Levy.
Apologies.
Nigel, Patty. Identification of items of business of mine nature. Declaration of conflict of interest, perhaps myself as being a director of Venture Timber. Chairman's report. I have got one, I'm sorry. Not seeing one. And so we'll go to the confirmation of minutes.
Happy to move.
6.1. Thank you to Councillor Wills. Second Barbara. And that takes us straight on to our reports. Page 13, which we're going to start with. Sorry, we're going to have a change here, ladies. We're going to go to Venture Timber. Call those boys up for a starter. Thank you, Nigel, Mark. So we're going to 7.7. Page 74. Welcome to Nigel and Mark.
Thank you. So, in order, Mr. Chair, is it the 6-monthly report first?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity to come along and talk to the report. This report is dated the 28th of February, but it is for the 6 months from until the end of December 2020. I'll take it as read, just a couple of things to highlight. The Regional Apprenticeship Initiative, that's actually fully committed on the 2nd of March this year. And as stated in there, the impact of that, the multiplier effect of that 4 million into our wider Mid-South Henry North Otago is approximately about 14 million, as that is central government support administered by us straight into the businesses. At last count, there were about 2 to 3 apprentices down through North Otago and about 18 to 19 in Mid-Canterbury, and the rest of them here in South Canterbury. So they were across new apprentices into the businesses, primarily through construction, mechanical engineering, etc. A small number of those were affected by COVID. About 25% of the 100 were Māori in Pacifica, and a good number of them have been picked up as pre-trains as well. So, and it was a good, it was about, I think at last count, I think it was about 8 or 9 of them were actually young ladies coming into the trains, which is pretty good as well. The other thing, from our KPIs perspective, things are going along nicely. One thing I would comment on is that whilst our quarter-on-quarter improvement in our employment rate, we were at 3.3% in June, 3.7% in September, and December 4%. We're still below the national average, but the one thing I would say is that our job seeker numbers as at the end of January for the Timaru district, we're actually back below where we were pre-COVID as well. So a lot of that has to do with obviously the wide variety of roles that we have to get filled. There's a bit of seasonality sitting in there as well, but it is fair to say that we still have that issue as stated in the report around that attractive workforce. I've always thought it was quite important from a visual perspective to include some metrics. And the one I would bring your attention to is the Timaru District Visitor Spend. Again, it's a measurement of ours around quarter-on-quarter improvement in visitor spend. You'll see on the graph on page 7, I think it is, of my report, the increase across the last few months. 30 million in the June quarter, up to 36 million in the September quarter, and big jump up to 44 million in December as well. So that's business spent from, we monitor Canterbury, and rest of New Zealand as well as international. There's a huge amount of international spending at the moment. So the financials there, I've made comment around the fact that we have a variety of income streams now over and above the grants that we receive direct from council. Those central government contracts are specific for specific initiatives that we're either administering, driving on behalf of central government, and a lot of those funds we actually receive in advance, so they're expended over the period of months ahead. So, and I also thought it appropriate to highlight on page 11 of my report the Housing Affordability Index. That's calculated by the median household income in the various districts, how many times that median income you need to spend it to get your median house price, and we sit pretty favourably to the rest of the country. But again, as is, I think I highlighted in our last discussion, we have some pretty good stock in that sort of 400 or 500 below. I think Councillor Fed made some comments around this, and then also that 850, but we're missing the mark in the middle, which is those new affordable houses sitting in that sort of 500 to 850 segment. And again, just finishing off, it's always quite good just to provide you with some visuals around some of the events and promotions and that we're doing as well. So in relation to that report, as I said, I'm happy to take what is read and happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that, Nigel. Councillor. Nigel Mark.
Nigel, probably the same question I asked you 6 months ago. It's around, I guess a lot of people see economic development as landing new business and new opportunities. I realise you're in negotiations with some, but can you give us examples of any you've landed in the last 12 months? And sorry, the second point is in that same section, just about exciting opportunities for the airport where you can expand on those.
Yeah, sure. So in relation to a couple of new businesses, Men at Work is a traffic management company. We've been in discussions with them. They've established a Timaru branch now down here, and we also played a part role. We sat down with I better not get a name right, Narisha and Richie, in relation to Kita Tika Te Ara, which is a localised Maori cultural competency company that's recently started up as well. So they were mentioned in the paper recently. So they're just a couple of examples. As you mentioned, there are some discussions ongoing in relation to those areas that I mentioned. In terms of the airport, it's been great. Matt and Matt Systems out at the airport have ignited a regular catch up on some of the opportunities and plans that Matt has for the airport and the strategic plan. And one of them relates to the enhanced GPS that Timaru Airport's been noted as being a place of interest for the location of that, which then leads on to things like precision farming, etc. as well. So it brings the degree of error, that's the layman's term, from meters down to millimetres. So one of the discussions I've been having through our contacts as a result of sustainable attainable interlinker, and especially is around opportunities potentially to utilise some of that net as it fits in obviously with the current lease profile, etc. as well. So the other part too is we've been in joint discussions with some of our producers around some of their time-sensitive product. In New Zealand is really keen to utilise within the existing schedule some of the capability to get some of their time-sensitive product out of Timaru rather than on trucks or couriers, etc. And even at the moment, nationally, there are challenges for our producers around some of their time-sensitive products. So we're talking largely fish, to be quite honest. But there's also others that can potentially utilise that as well. Over and above the New Zealand opportunity, we're also in discussions with one of our southern airports around the possibility of a
Chris. Here, I know this is not specific to this period of time, but impact on events, or current events, in regards to COVID.
Sure. So the most recent and obvious one was the deferral of banquet, which was set aside for last Saturday. Unfortunately, it was an absolutely stunning Timaru day. It would have been great, but the issue we had with that was that the lead-in time, a lot of the acts or music acts, as well as some of the food and beverage vendors were coming out of Auckland. So they had to make the decision. Thankfully, they offer, unlike a couple of other events around the Canterbury region, they offer a full refund policy, and of the approximately 1,100 tickets that have been pre-sold, only about 50 or 60 took up the refund option. And a lot of the feedback was that, oh geez, we couldn't get to this one, but we can get to the one when it's rescheduled in, I think it's the 9th of October. That was the main one. Past weekend, we were fortunate to have the Tactics and the Steel Netball teams in town for 3 days and a couple of matches. But the big event this weekend, obviously, is Rock and Hop. We've got the multicultural event down at the Farmers Market as well. There's a multi-sport event down at Jordan. So, the main one was that banquet one that just had, it sat in that sort of ether around that level 2 back to level 1. And at the end of the day, you just got to make some of those tough calls. But we're formalised back into these ones in the coming weeks and months as well.
I guess the other one that I had concept that was you mentioned that our employment, unemployment is very low. And what impact are our horticultural people, seasonal companies in our district actually satisfying with the demand that they need in regards to people to pick the produce?
The quick answer to that is no. Some of the orchardists, as you might have seen in the paper in the last couple of days, have been fortunate for some of those other estate workers that have come through. But it is still an issue for them, definitely in this harvest. And, they're scrambling, I suppose, with the rest of the horticultural industry around the South Island in particular, to get those workers to get that product off the tree. I think the other big issue, which I highlighted in my report, is that, we do produce enough food and beverage for 40 million people, but at the moment we're really struggling to get it to them. And, I'm hearing anecdotally that a good chunk of our cool storage down the east coast of the South Island in the next 2 to 3 weeks will be full, which is a critical issue for us, obviously, from our food producer and manufacturer's perspective. We're just not getting the volume of those containers through into this part of the country to then get our product out.
Thank you. Are there any other questions, guys, on that report? Okay, well, I'm probably quite happy to move that report. Steve, second. Thank you. And it takes us on to the draft statement of intent. No, thank you.
Good. So, as a bit of background, we had the Timaru Strategy Day back in February, which incorporated the economic development strategy and the destination management plan work that had been completed to date. We also took into account the TDC input regarding sustainability and climate change. There's ongoing work in regards to the economic development strategy and destination management plan, but we verified some of that in terms of the updates in this SOI and the underlying fundamentals still remain. So the work that was completed gave us this draft document, which got us to Venture Timaru having a vision of attract, grow and retain people, businesses that contribute to a thriving Timaru district economy. The statement of intent includes 5 points noted down on the first page, and we've given particular attention to workforce attraction, housing, logistics, and event support grant as key items for the economy at the moment. The substance of the report is over on page 4, which is this document here. We've got our vision up top, and then we've added some new areas in terms of our pillars. Historically, we've had the first three that maintain, attract, encourage opportunities and attract new businesses. We had tourism on this year, but that was in it was a moving piece at this stage. So what we've been able to do is drill into that a wee bit more and integrate the approach in terms of the economic development and tourism to have the three new more specific pillars there. We've got areas of action under each of those, which are more the day-to-day business as usual. And then we also had a real focus on strategic projects which will cross over economic development and tourism, and we think that the potential makes step change within the district. So those three projects are enable and promote Timaru, the Central South Island distribution and logistics hub, development of an authentic and integrated Timaru district brand identity. And I think that one goes to the heart of having ED and tourism together. When we had the We Love Timaru campaign as an economic development agency, it did present opportunities and was a brand to tourism and marketing as well. We have brought those together, but we haven't done it in a formalised way. And so we really want to revisit that, particularly in regards to having these two big pieces of work done to make sure that it's coordinated and we can look on to. And the third area is encourage a cross-sector master plan approach to the development of Caroline Bay. Caroline Bay is crown jewel, and it also relates to another number of areas such as the CBD. And we just think that's an important piece of work in tourism perspective. In terms of key monitoring performance and success indicators on page 5, economic development can be challenging to monitor. There are, however, some overarching key indicators that we think it's very important to keep an eye on. GDP contribution, unemployment rate, housing affordability, and consumer and business spend. So we'll be reporting those to council in our quarterly reports to keep track of the other regions going holistically. However, in terms of specific outcomes for Venture Timaru, we've listed down performance indicators of value of Venture Timaru interactions with local businesses, which we're currently conducting through our surveys of local businesses. At the fourth one, the ease of doing business in the Timaru district with year-on-year improvement. We currently conduct that as well by engaging with businesses. Two new ones relate to the value of Venture Timaru work to shareholder, and so that is in Timaru District Council specifically, and value of Venture Timaru for wider stakeholders, central government, contract providers. So we were doing CEO performance review this year and setting KPIs for next year. One of the key things we thought was important was to understand the value of the contribution that we provide to our key funders, particularly to the District Council shareholder. And while we think we have very positive relationships at the moment, they're very qualitative, so we want to have a quantitative measure that we can see how people are feeling and new areas and opportunities for improvement. So those are two areas that are going to be developed and we'll report back on to make sure that we're doing what people want us to be doing and we're doing it well. And then those success indicators will be captured or recorded in the quarterly reports and annual reports to TDC. And that is bulk of the strategic aspect. There's a lot of accounting policies and other requirements that we're mandated to include. I'll leave it at that from my perspective, not to operation.
So that's where we've landed from a draft perspective, bearing in mind those pieces of work that Mark alluded to, the economic development strategy, the information management plan, that work in wider what steps of stakeholder engagement some of the way at the moment. So on that piece of those pieces of work are finished come the end of May or June, that will form inform. So this very much is a draft, but that's based on those initial themes that we were hearing from the stakeholders engaged with at the time prior to us submitting the report. So yeah.
And the final, the substantive item that is, there's a couple of other documents at the end as well, is the request for an event support grant, which is included in the SLA. I'll take that as read. The rationale is included in the document. We commented on tourism spend increasing quarter on quarter, which is going well. Last year, TDC provided a grant to BT to stimulate in light of COVID. That was a quick response. We feel there's still opportunity to develop and grow, attract new events, but also potentially grow existing events. And so this above medium and large events, $10,000 to $50,000 is the key, but it needs to be a structured, managed way, and this was one way to store it and facilitate that. So you can put that.
Okay, perhaps I'll just ask.
Yeah, just so overall, so today, I guess the purpose of today is to have a good look at the SOI, that we can develop that feedback, some sort of feedback for each tomorrow. So it's about considering the statement of intent in this draft meets the requirements of council, does it give sufficient linkage with your long-term plan and strategy focus areas. And we've got the new item to discuss today, which is the request for $150,000 of lending funding. So in that currently we don't annually currently fund into that event development fund. We've got a fund that's still got money in it, but it is reducing. It's not being renewed on an annual basis at this point. So we would need to consider how that is funded. I think that we would get sufficient funding for year one, and we're still doing some work on that, but it's a sustainable model where we consider the funding for that.
Okay, yeah, Nigel.
Sorry, Don, were you referring to the economic development?
Just currently the city up strategy.
This financial year. And there's some commitments on an annual basis that we're committed to, I think, isn't it? And that's why we had sort of made some allowance, not on the future budgets there, $2,000 that we discussed at the budget time. But I understand that we had a risk on BT at the time.
So we've added $50,000 to $50,000 of increase on February into the draft budget that's being considered at the moment, pre-consultation. But there's still a question of what's the annual funding for if we wanted to get to 200.
It does get renewed just when it's after it's used, doesn't it? Is that correct?
We don't have it's funded, right? So it's a reserve that is being utilised, but
Right. My understanding was that once used in the financial parliament, just back to 200,000. Is that Councillor Hynd, have you got any recollections over the last? No, that's all right. That was my understanding, but that's okay. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor.
Yeah, just you guys talked about Caroline Bay. I think we were in the master plan as well for Caroline Bay. I don't want to see a whole lot of consultants scrubbing over each other down on Caroline Bay. We'll do 3 reports that land back here.
No, definitely not. We looked at the City Hub strategy discussion document come out that stated the possibility of a master plan or an extended master plan for CBD to incorporate Caroline Bay. We were aware that decision had been formally made and committed to. So it was one thing that stuck out of us through the initial application with the City Hub strategy, that basically that a joint asset should be included in that strategy. Hey, look, if it is, I can check off one strategic. Yeah,
That's a great idea. I agree with just
no, that definitely wouldn't be the case at all. But I think just to give a wee bit of context behind that is that as Mark said, with the massive asset ours, we are in discussions with an entity at the moment that is keen to establish a facility down here, a visitor attraction facility. And they need some, I suppose, we need to understand, is that possible on that piece of land or not, or It doesn't fit in with the bigger picture, that's, that I suppose that we're missing, so that's the context of why we were.
Second question is probably more generic to the council, but you're asking for 150K to go to you guys. We also have some facilities and loans and grants. I think we just, as a council, need to sit down and sort this out. Who is actually giving away the money to where and what's that? And, you know, and have some rigidity about the grants, because it seems if someone fails here, they can go somewhere else. And it just would make more sense to have one clear policy. And, you know, whether people can, how many times they can come back. I mean, these are all great things people are doing, but it also needs some structure. That's what I'm saying.
Councillor Wells. Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Councillor David, pretty much captured what I was going to raise. Going back to the initial application, we received the support grant of 150,000. I know in your report you talked about we're not seeking an increase in either economic or tourism operational grant, but I see this as just an extension of your financial gain land support from PDC for 150,000 per year. So the automatically should build into what we already give you as far as funding. So I don't see it necessarily as a key article around that, talk about structure management and all those processes around it. I just see it as an extra 150,000 per year. It should be what you're doing as an operational organisation delivering around opportunity. And I'll just finish up another part.
But I guess when we say the operation part, we mean the running of the tourism component of BT, whereas this is having money come in, assessing and giving it to other organisations. So it doesn't change their base structure, processes, day-to-day operations. And so that's the difference when you're referring to operations. So if it is all that lumped together, I understand what you're saying, but that's where we'll just make a differentiation and put the policy together as well. That's not their rationale. I guess the council at the moment, council of Newton Borough, does give money out and doesn't need to be coordinated. We just saw, based on last year's experience, an opportunity for BT, being a tourism agency, being close and nimble and able to move, being potentially good facilitator for those funds.
And just on that too, one of the immediate things we did when the visitor or the responsibility for the RTO came back into Inchitory, we established immediately, actually probably before this official came back into us, a tourism and visitor advisory group, which incorporates a wide variety of representation from their hospitality, accommodation operators, sport, airport, arena, etc. as well. So we have a very direct connection into that space for which we've been mandated to operate by council, and we believe that that alone provides us with a real sound foundation. We are in regular contact with what needs are coming up and what's making sure that we're coordinated, we're not being busy folks in the space. So from a ability to decide and manage a specific medium to large events that will drive economic and social benefits in the district, we're very well placed to do that on behalf, obviously, of the wider council. And the understanding would be, obviously, that as we did with the stimulus fund, that those people that are supported recognise and feel the value of that support provided by council in each time.
Thank you for that. I suppose I'm really concerned about the crossover that maybe everyone's dipping into where pool that we don't necessarily control from the British Council angle, but also you'll be managing your side. You've got operational capacity to meet it. I'd also like to mostly see some sort of consultation paper between yourselves and two district council officers around their whole funding streams and engagement with our wider community as well and how that looks. So there's actually almost capacity to meet your expectations, but also to district council's expectations to deliver to our community as well for the gaps it's seen.
Sorry. I guess I'd just like to comment as a director of Inchitory. In tourism, a big chunk of that really is events for obviously tourism. That's what we've got as the main thing. And so to be, it does tend to make sense that it is all within one place, because that is tourism for South Canterbury. It's not necessarily people getting on a plane coming through, it's the attraction of the surrounding districts by creating events that they might come, Central South on events. Those are the things that need to be, and I don't think we've got down to the bolts and nuts, but it does tend to make sense in my mind that it should be, whether it's ratified by this council, they make a recommendation, that's all up for discussion.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just further to my recommendation about a report, bringing the two organisations together and understanding funding streams and benefits for the community, just to ensure that we are not getting a lot of crossover, because this money is all coming into a similar sort of pool.
It's trying to eliminate two different separate entities, trying to achieve the same thing, but potentially not actually talking to each other about what they're doing. And you're in a situation where you've got someone playing someone outside someone else. But obviously that would be avoided at all costs.
Well, I think we had established that we would review grants policy along this conversation potentially it was. So I think that's something we take into account.
Yeah, so each of us have to work on some registry council to make sure that we coordinate as a group. Absolutely.
So there's a way, just
Those two operational grant streamline development interests, those are two big sectors in terms of operation.
Okay, just Donna, some questions in regards to statement of intent.
Right, just a couple of things. So with the statement of intent, we've got to get alignment between our own long-term plan and levels of service. And so I think with their, we've currently got some levels of service, but where you're saying, Mark, that it can be difficult, challenging to track some of the stuff for sort of key benchmarks here. Just my question would be, whether there's an opportunity to make those more specific or quantifiable.
So I think what I was referring to was in terms of economic development and assigning responsibility to Venture Timaru, it can be quite difficult. So GDP, if the dairy price payout falls, Venture Timaru has absolutely no impact over that. However, it's important to monitor holistically so that we understand where the district's going. When we look around and what we've got from economic development experts, those are the right measures to be tracking. So that's where we've got that first stage of overarching economic development, and then you've got the specific measures for BT itself, which is around delivery to the stakeholders, shareholder, and business community.
And is the year-on-year measure, I guess, the right measure, or could that be made, quantified differently, or at any current levels of service with quite specific percentages around what's the minimum improvements or things? I'm just interested to see if that's something we can look at together.
We can definitely look at that together. I think year-on-year improvement is important because it shows that we're improving, but if it's got an minimum as well, that's also, we can incorporate those. But if we work on that together, we're certainly happy. We've got flexibility.
Okay, thank you for that. So we move.
So I guess we have to, there's a couple of things we have to sort of determine what the feedback is for Venture Timaru, so they can know from their final statement of intent. So and you can consider it and come back in another meeting and determine that if we need some action and time. We've got time, but these guys will give us their final statement of intent by June. So we'll need to officially provide feedback prior to the 1st of May. And then there's a question about the request for the feedback around that.
Okay, sure. So we move a motion that we that we will have a time period for consideration for the council to give feedback to each of the group so they can produce one statement that they are briefing.
If council want to provide feedback, or if they're useful to have it through one channel, if it's collating considerably. So the level of expectations process, if it adjusts, just some form of feedback would be useful.
Other than Donna's comments, have we got any other comments?
Happy to see the motion.
Motion, and council will see the motion. Those vote, say aye. Aye. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Let's go back to the start. Go back to 7.1. Welcome. Lee and Ashley. You're up.
Yes, so we'll take the report as read and maybe just add a couple of comments. So this is the fourth version of the dashboard that we received since the start of the financial year. So as you will notice, the content of the dashboard evolves as we go through the year. This version includes on the left-hand side an update on the financials as of end of January. Things of note maybe on this part is the actuals are as of end of January. The annual budget includes downloads at 100%, but does not include the carry forwards in the 3 water stimulus, and the forecast that has been outlined here for activity and group of activity refers to the forecast and the reforecast exercise that was done as part of the LTP process that has been given here for information purpose. One thing that is important to note here is with regards to the actuals. So as of end of January, we were at 22.3 million. This represents a significant increase compared to where we were sitting at the same point of time in the previous year. So we are continuing on our journey to increase capacity to deliver internally and progressing well there. There is a significant additional expenditure to expect by the end of the year, as the forecast clearly outlines. And to kind of, as Mr. Harper already pointed this morning, but to kind of demonstrate how we are getting there, the right-hand side of the dashboard is outlining all of the construction work that's currently ongoing in the district, or the main one at the very least. And as Mr. Harper pointed out, you can see that a lot of things are happening at the moment. So there is a lot of work that is in construction, and we expect to see in the coming weeks a big increase in the spending, and that will be reflected in the 8-month report that is going to be due anytime soon. So we're happy to take any question on this dashboard.
Well, there's a couple of things I could add as well, Mr. Chairman, and that is the left-hand chart there up to the end of January. That's looking financially in the rear view mirror. The ones in the blue table, the right-hand side of the page, is really looking out the window to see what's going on at the moment. And the other issue that is not here is forward-looking. So last week and the week before, Audit have been here, and they have been particularly interested in our forward work program. And because next year the activity level is higher than this, and we were able to show them that already as of today, we have let $30 million worth of work for next financial year. And also we've let, and there's a bit of crossover, $25 million worth of work is in the procurement phase for the next 3 years. Road resurfacing, 3-year contract. The road maintenance contract has some CapEx in it, and that's 5 years aside. So we're able our role is, this year's program, but also to make sure next year and the year after is also being built on strong foundations. And so we've got 30 million left now for next financial, and that doesn't show up here, and 25 million in procurement phase for the next 3 years. So we're working on those fronts as well.
I see here on the bottom there, you've got a number of 53,479,000 under, which is highly feasible, under a number 85 million. Are you expecting some savings, or are you expecting things to be not costing as much as perhaps forecast?
There's probably several components to that. One is, yes, some projects do not cost as much, and so therefore they come in under budget, but are highly feasible. You might recall back during lockdown, we had a number of conference calls and so on. We identified in the capital expenditure program of 84 million, 54 were 52.5 were highly feasible. And they were the ones that we knew we could get done with due diligence and effort. There were a number that were subject to resource consent, finding land for a cemetery, and those things that we deem to be medium and low feasibility, and they make up that difference of 29 million. But since then, there have been some changes. For example, there's carry forwards projects with funding that we have generally already spent. The government stimulus package comes on to add into that, and so it really is a moving issue, and it changes daily. But right now, we've got a lot of commitments, and there's a lot of work being done.
Thank you. Okay, it's Councillor Pillington.
Thanks, Ash. Obviously, there's a lot of work being done. Just wondered whether there should be an exception report if there's something in that column that we're not going to achieve. Like you've got completion at 60/50, but if something wasn't going to, I don't want it on all, but if you had a problem, you made us aware in any of those constructions.
Yes, we think that a lot of that sort of information comes through the budget process. So we've got there's several, sources of truth that goes into these documents, and trying to get a single source of truth for all the numbers, all the projects, and getting alignment is a bit difficult. But yes, we know what you're saying. We've also got our unit managers all coming in to speak to us, or us to them more correctly, budget holders next, is it Monday or Tuesday? And that's on the basis that they have all, and we as an organisation made a commitment of where we're going to be at the end of the financial year, and we need to, with 3 months left, we need to drive that home. Yeah, and so our focus is to make sure that the forecast is actually what we deliver, because council's agreed to that, and we will report on any major exceptions as we see it from here on.
Yeah, look, you'll have a feel on the match. I don't need the detail, but if there's one of those on the list that isn't going to make the cut, because you can't, it's procurement or other problems.
And there could be 1 or 2 issues to do with supply chain from overseas. Also weather, we've got to this stage, everything's looking like we're making great progress, but if we get a mini cyclone for a fortnight, well, that's 10% of the remaining part of the year, then this is going to impact on you.
And maybe just to add on this too, is some of the work listed here, such as Para Pipeline Section 1, we don't expect full completion within this financial year. So that will go over, but the project will be completed, but that's within this financial year. But yes, of course, if for any of those projects we notice that something will impact the delivery in the full completion, we will report.
Councillor Parker.
Thank you. Thank you for your report. With the increase of infrastructure projects going on, are we managing to maintain monitoring regarding the construction, development, the ongoing quality of work the contractors are performing for us?
Absolutely, and that's one of my work streams. We share in this role, but we're doing different work streams within it. And part of my role is and we've had a couple of meetings there, we're getting all the construction supervisors. We're meeting every 3 or 4 weeks, and we are making sure that we are consistent, we are enforcing the contract terms and conditions, we're making sure that we're getting consistency across all that we do, and that we're resourced, and those guys are stretched, and that's one of my missions at the moment, is to see where we're heading in the next 3 months, to see if we need to hire in a consultant resource to help with that work, because it is time consuming, especially when you've got projects in the upper Parry-Ora Gorge, you've got projects at Te Anawai intake, it's an hour travel each way, so we need to be both efficient in what we do, but also effective and make sure we are doing it sufficiently rigorously, and I think we've got that in hand.
Okay, move on to the next report. Quite well received and lodged on Barbara. Thank you. Councillor Lyon, second. All those in favour, say aye. Thank you. Thank you. Here's the word. 7.2. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair, Your Worship, councillors and members of the Community Board. Social housing, first of all, as you can see from the report, we're tracking 60% through completed, and the budget reasonably underspent, though I'm told we actually overestimated a little bit because we were dealing with some unknowns in some of the residential housing, so we're expecting to come in under budget at the end of this financial year. And overall spend on the social really well, so we're moving some of that extra spend to be able to look at some windows and various other items within the social housing that will help with not just the ventilation program. So tracking really well. If there's any questions for that in particular.
I've just got one. How's the public receiving the upgrades? Has it been relatively positive?
Yes.
You mean the tenants?
Tenants, yeah.
Yes, a couple of people have had issues with some of the systems being put, say, generally in their gardens, and that was sort of working through some of that, but on the whole, absolutely well received, yes. Yeah. And I think we'll get a better feel for that over this winter, because as they've gone in over the summer, they're obviously not using those systems, but we're expecting, but certainly, yes.
And I think some of that, to wave the flag on behalf of Pip, who's not here, she's done a fantastic job getting out and meeting the people before the contractor turns up on site. Because once the contractor on site, he does that whole site, and Pip has got on site. She's got all these people well tuned in to the contractor's coming, and she's also got the contractor well managed so that they go to one unit and they do some of their work there, and as their stuff moves through, they actually make sure they actually have a completion as well. They're not doing all one type of work amongst 8 units and then come back for the, and so they're actually progressing down the line, and that's proving to be minimising the disruption, and the tenants love that.
Fantastic. So we should almost see some savings for some of our tenants as well around heating costs and power and everything else. So
It's about healthy homes, lack of moisture and all that.
no, that's fantastic.
Pip's really making sure that really works well.
Thank you, actually, for singing your praises. She is actually doing really, really well. So moving on to the Theatre Royal. So just an update, we actually have cast an and Richard Clifford, who is the director from Architects in Auckland, here this afternoon. So I will have to disappear after this report. They're having a walk around the site and just getting a feel for some information which I'll get to. So I'll take the report first of all that you would have updated yourselves. So first of all, some decal on the front door. So thank you very much to our comms team, to Stephen and to Elizabeth for sorting that out, getting some good information back from theatre goers wandering down there to spot themselves on the front doors, because that's gone down really, really well. Theatre seats are all out and we're into stage 2. So at the moment, the stage area is out of bounds. We have a team there which have been the usual team operating the theatre, shows now decommissioning the actual fly system. So the curtains are actually coming down, and we have our health and safety person here this afternoon to overview all of the safety plans for that activity. So there's a lot of action happening there as of this week. Seats I am seeking permission that we're now ready to be able to dispose of all of those theatre seats. So we have various parties from Geraldine Cinema to some of the theatre groups and schools, etc. So I'll go through that process that we will maybe have a drive up and collect and try and dispose of those seats in the most amicable way that we can and fair for the parties. So that's ready to go. So demo, just to bring you up to date, unfortunately, Ashley and Susie and Andrew have all the diggers at the moment, as you know, 36 of them across the district. So we're waiting, so we're expecting our works to begin June, July and August. So we're really waiting for everybody to come off the roads, and we have an RFP process for those demolition works out at the moment, being led by Rubik's project team. And we have 3 local operators. But as I said, once we get an idea of when they're free to go and finished up on some of the other works in the neighbourhood, you'll see some significant activity across on that site in regards to preparation. We have some options for design, hence the reason why Karsten and Richard are here today, just to familiarise themselves with the last of the options. I've seen some of the progress up to last week and also some of the costings that came in. I went up to Christchurch and met with the group and looking really, really good. So the reference group and my senior leadership team will get to see some of the options next week for some consideration and for some feedback for them to be able to go away and continue to work on those actual designs for us. We've actually held a risk management workshop internally as well, so we're now waiting for some feedback from Rubik's in regards to the detail of those risks. We have a 6-month plan that has been drawn up just to give us a feel of where we're going to go through this winter, so with some of the demolition and then work on the theatre, etc. We're also getting some good reports back in regards to the MBS status of the theatre. So the likelihood is we won't have the same extent of works as in taking away some of the back end of the building. So that is actually going to be a really good plus to the budget and allow us to actually do a little bit more of a design and kind of makeover of the internals. So actually really, really good news on that front. So I'm looking forward to seeing that actual report, engineered report in a little bit more detail. That'd be great news. I think that at this stage is probably enough of an update, and I'm open to any questions.
Councillor Pennant.
When you talk about demolition, what are we demolishing, just so I know?
So the first agreed buildings, obviously we're looking at the Army Hall and the car park side, and we're also looking at 2 small buildings between what is the Excelsior and also the theatre itself, so it's quite a large area. And then going forward, depending on the options and designs, there may be some areas of the back end of the Excelsior that will come into that mix as well. So.
Cool, thanks for that. Just
welcome.
Keep us in the picture. And if designs, if we talk designs and budgets, we were going to get some idea of budgets. Can you give us any idea, A, whether they're within budget, and B, when we're actually going to see it?
After my conversation last week and my visit to Christchurch, they will now be within budget, yes. The first initial budget, based on the scope, had come out a little bit higher than I thought, but there were some areas, the theatre and the extent of works, in having to now not rebuild the whole back of the theatre has certainly made a very, very big difference to that budget. So it is now back within the realms that we've talked about, and now 23.2. Again, they're going to come back as you request in the first instance to price up the scope and then talk to you the areas where they feel there are good savings and some of the areas in the scope that we feel now may not need to happen, but still actually deliver a really good building value. So that will come next week. They are aiming to have that budget discussion and some of those options for us. So the reference group and then bringing it to the council meeting and for you for an update. So tracking really well. Thank you.
I guess one concern that I've got is that we want set concept, there's been no mention of the concept. And really, the budget really revolves around the concept plans. So I guess it's not sort of, we should, reading the minutes from the last meeting, we were supposed to have some concepts by the end of February.
So they are a couple of weeks behind in actually delivering the full concept, but there are some concept designs as in options next week. Rawlinson's have done some high level pricing for your budgets in regards to the actual scope. And then they're now currently doing some more detailed work on the actual options that are coming to the table. So once we've decided on one of those options in this next week or two, Carson and the team will be able to then dive into an actual deeper concept based on one of the design options that we look at. So that's happening in this next couple of weeks.
I guess the concept evolves through stake input and stakeholders input, etc. So it evolves through this, that'll work, that won't work. So I guess you may see an initial concept, but that can take 6 months to thrash out to get where you want to be. Really, therefore, you can't price effectively until you've done that work.
No, I appreciate that, and they are running behind in delivering the full concept, but at least the designs, and they are coming to the table with, have brought in the majority of the scope, and the items that will be out of scope are like extension of the wings at the back of the theatre, for instance, that are not required. Rawlinson's are very conscious that you are waiting for some idea on costings. If anything, when we go into the more detailed design, we will be able to drive this cost down. I've seen some of the high level costing, and there is definitely room for manoeuvre in the downwards and not upwards, and it is fully detailed in regards to those costings down to curtains and other items. So they've done a really, really good job in capturing the full extent of the build options. I can only apologise that we are going to be 3 or 4 weeks behind a more detailed design quality. But concept will come in this next 2 months. So once you've actually, as a group, have decided on which design is more.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just, I guess, so the stakeholder input, so we went through a process where we did quite extensive stakeholder interviews and workshops as part of the design brief. That's got the development of the design brief, which council signed off. That's what the QS have been costing up, is essentially that design brief. In parallel with that, the design team has been working on the concept design. And a concept design will go from concept through to developed, preliminary developed, and then detailed design, ultimately the final design. When the concept's in, and we're getting the first look at the draft concept next week, and then that'll be costed up as well by the QS, and then they'll continue to run the costings across it. I think we have to have the time to be able to establish the full project team. We've been through Christmas, we've now got a draft design coming to us next week, and then to the table, but the costs that we've got so far are off the design brief, and then they'll be updated for the concept design that gets presented to you over the next few weeks.
So the steering group will have the concept to look at within 2 weeks, is that right?
Yeah, so we're getting the first look next week at the draft, then they go away and modify that some more. So we've got a reference group that was originally set up to look at the fundraising opportunities for the project as well as the design. So that now needs to really ramp up the level that we're into design, and that includes Deputy Mayor, and Chair of the Community Services Committee, and Councillor O'Reilly. So they'll be invited along next week to try and firm up the date and time with the architects to be able to present on that. And then, and that's so you can get, this is a team that you've nominated to kind of give us input along the way, and then they'll come back for formal approvals and discussion with the council as well. So
I like to confirm that they are reasonably well advanced. So once the designs, the ideas of the design, it will not take long to actually come back with some firmer costings around it. So some of the designs I've seen are quite well advanced.
Excellent pictures.
It's
Yeah.
Good picture. So I'm picking up on a point you made before, you're saying the back house didn't need to be replaced, so yeah, what's the case there?
and MBS rating for the building, with the very tall high brick walls, we needed to investigate just how much work or bracing had happened in that building in roof cavity areas. There is a lot more than first thought, and the building is actually a lot higher in the MBS over towards the 67. So there's very few things that we need to do to actually be able to bring it back, which has meant we don't have to deconstruct the whole back of stage and then the changing rooms. If we can now keep that entire building intact, it saves us an awful lot of time, and you know we're talking $2 or $3 million of cost savings. So it's a really big plus. Which has helped that budget immensely, because cost of a new museum and just the overall site, you know, these things are not cheap anymore, and the cost of contractors is definitely a lot with COVID and the amount of activity, but it's made some significant difference, and I just want to see that engineer's report so I can absolutely confirm that it's definitely tracking well.
Councillor Green.
So I guess as long as it's not going to compromise the long-term.
No.
From the investment.
Councillor Green.
Sorry, just for clarity, so the whole council's not going to see their concept plan next week, just that group. And I'm wondering whether it should be the whole council, not just 4 councillors, being how big the project is and how it makes the community.
So we'll just extend an invite to everyone.
So just taking Castle here team. So I think just there's lots of options and discussions at the moment about possibilities with regards to the build. Originally, the project scope was to remove the back of house and into the dressing house area and kind of recreate that, as well as creating some height and strengthening to the stage house. Not necessarily earthquake strengthening, but strengthening to facilitate the new rigging system and those sorts of things. So those are all the things that have been tossed around a little bit at the moment. So we haven't got a landing on anything. These are just like looking at the opportunities, I guess, within the project. We're going to have some ups and we're going to have some downs, and that's kind of the nature of the project. What we're looking to do is try and bring it in around that, that budget. And we know that we've got the design brief, we've got some options that have been tabled that were outside of the original scope, such as rehearsal space, wing space. Some of the sort of stuff is getting eliminated, some is still incorporated. Need to bring that back as well, because they were essentially out of scope in terms of the original budget. So those are some things we need to make some decisions around as well when the concept and the budget comes in.
Okay, well, thank you for that report.
Okay.
And I think that probably brings it to, perhaps we'll move a motion to accept the report received. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Thank you. Moving on to 7.3, financial report to the end of January 2021. Sorry.
Just introduce it, that's right. So what we're doing here, this is a report you can expect to receive from the Outreach Commercial Strategy Committee. Just looking at getting a regular financial report. Used to provide them for 1 month, 8 months and 12 months, so you can get them now every Commercial Strategy Committee. And there's still some work we're doing to refine and improve, etc. But this is a sort of starting point. So
Thank you, Zero.
Thank you. So just further to what Donna's just said, obviously we're in the process of improving some of our systems so that we can produce these on a monthly basis. So going forward, you will receive it. Also, just to note that it is a work in progress for the January accounts. We would appreciate the feedback that you give, and we hope to tweak it going forward. However, we hope to integrate some of the CapEx related things in there as well as other variances. And going forward, Lily and I and the planning team, we're working through to make sure that we also have the core results more aligned, as Ashley also spoke about that a little bit before, because we've got various versions of truth. We are in the process of that. However, the really good news is because of the RTP process, we were able to do a bit of a reforecast, and we can talk to that a little bit today as well. So just take the report as read. However, I just want to highlight a couple of things in the report. The operating revenue at 5.51.72 million, which is actually 3.3 higher than forecast. It's actually due to a couple of reasons, the main ones being highlighted in here. And the operating expenditure, 49.7 million, and it's actually comprised of quite a number of things, which is personal costs, operating costs, finance costs, and depreciation costs. And the key reason for the financing costs, as you know, the interest rate fluctuations, just to give you a quick idea of what we're talking about, the annual plan was set at around 4%. However, what we've actually reflected in there is 0.8 to 1.2%, so you can see how quickly those numbers start to look like huge variances, but it is due to the economy. And one other thing I do want to highlight in here is just around the capital expenditure on this report for the community support. There's a slight variance in there which will be reflected in the February accounts. The forecast should actually read 2.156, not 2.98. Again, that was an issue that we found with the systems that's now reflected on there. Happy to take any questions.
Yeah, I think this is very helpful. This is obviously different to what we normally get. So certainly having the actuals placed there makes a lot of sense to see how we're tracking. I see you've also obviously just explained everything. If we've got any questions around the variations. So I guess I'm pretty happy with that. Is there anyone, any councillors like to have say anything about that?
No, look, I think it's really good, valuable information. It's probably answered a lot of questions there. And the report, so yeah, it's great, and happy to second that if you must get sorry.
I did have one question here. Democracy 1.8, 76. And you've got any recent experience payment of stimulus funding grants 1.7. So that obviously came directly out of their personal costs, is that right?
Oh, sorry, but yeah, I'd like it through you, Mr. Chair, to answer that question. So when the expenditure is given, it has to be apportioned to a particular activity, if you like, within council, and so that was the activity that expenditure was allocated against, was the stimulus fund at the annual plan last year, where you allocated that, and it's the democracy activity where we debit the expenditure, if you like. So that's why it's sitting there, because it didn't go to road and or say water, it went into the democracy activity. So that's why it is. So it's just money that's been allocated out to those various funds as you determine the end plan.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else? Well, I'd like to move that the report be accepted and I'll second that. And those in favour say aye. 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 Thanks, John. Thank you. This is on two. THL loan facility agreement. 32, page 32, 7.4. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'll take the report as read, but the history of this really is to regularise some accounting financial reporting requirements between TDHL and Timaru District Council. So for quite some time now, Timaru District Council has had an advance to TDHL. And the auditors asked a question about whether that advance was repayable on demand or whether it was repayable after a period of notice. And so the intention is that for TDHL, we wouldn't ask for it on demand, we would give them immediate notice if they were to have it asked for it, so it's regularising that arrangement. It is very much an issue around how council and TDHL report its current assets and its current liabilities. For those who love accounting, the irony is that it's eliminated on consolidation. So in actual fact, it doesn't mean anything really, but it is in terms of each of the entities in particular that it is shown that there is a loan from Timaru District Council to TDHL, and in turn TDHL has a liability back to council.
So that means that you've changed it to 366 days, so that means that it's over a year. It's put into the current. That's correct, non-current.
Yes.
Instead of currently, it's in the current.
That's exactly right, yes, yes. So current liabilities for those are, for instance, our power bills and so on, they are current liabilities because we'll pay them next month. Non-current liabilities are those that are out beyond 12 months. And so what we're saying is we're making a non-current liability.
Okay. Councillors? Councillor Pennington.
We get away too easy there. You wouldn't foresee any time when we would need that money quicker?
Well, actually, I'll let, through you, Mr. Chair, that's actually a really good question. And I think, Donna, would you like to just speak to a suggestion you have?
Well, I guess without having talked too much to TDHL about it, but I guess the question is there time to sort of review the arrangement? Is there a more cost-effective option both for TDHL and council in terms of borrowing? As we know, TDHL, for example, can potentially borrow now through the LGFA, etc. So one of the questions is what's the most effective use of funds for us as a collective, I guess, as well. So I think that's probably something that we can enter into discussions with around TDHL. This is a long-standing arrangement that would have been set up originally to provide, establishment capital, etc. The other questions that I think is a good question, something that we need to explore with TDHL. And also, I guess at the moment, this is a loan facility up to 45 million they can draw down. They currently draw down 22. I guess when you take away that on-demand aspect of it, what happens if there's a need for increased borrowings, and not that we're predicting that to be the case, but maybe if we're considering this loan agreement, we're considering its applicability to the 22 rather than potentially the 45, because that might be a different answer that we need to take to TDHL as well. So
that's going to be my next question.
Yeah.
I've got 22, why are we making the facility 45?
Yeah. So I think it's one of these things. It's a long-standing arrangement. It's timely, I think, to accommodate what we need to accommodate here. The council is in agreement, but also look at it with a view to having a look at reviewing the arrangement.
I guess how quickly can they draw down on solving? So Tuesday.
Well, it's not prescribed. There's no process prescribed within the agreement. So essentially, they do provide you with a drawdown notice, but there's not really a process to find around how you agree that they agree with interest rates, etc. So I think it's not well defined.
It's okay. Well, yes, we're quite happy with that. Okay.
So I think what you'll be doing here is, I think there's some other, some tidy up the changes that we've requested, such as the effective date is, the new effective date should be the date that we actually enter into the variation rather than the original date of the loan, and some other things that we've suggested be updated, such as some references to legislation, etc. So I think what you'll be doing here is approving the concept of the 366 days on the current level of the facility, and approving the chief executive to enter into that agreement with some other modifications to update contact details, legislation, references, etc. as well, and the effective date to be.
Sickness, Stu, those in favour, say aye. 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 Okay. Moving on to item 7.5, page 59. Current district holders 6-month report to December 2020. I assume you're going to speak to that as well.
Through you can do, Mr. Chair. I was going to take the report as read. I just know I've got an item coming up shortly, so happy to stay here and take questions on that. If there are any, but I'll take it.
I guess the dividend flow has changed. It's improved from Alpine Energy. And it's just a round number in here of $1 million. Is to what degree has it improved from Alpine Energy?
And it's just around improvement in, I think we budgeted quite conservatively with TDHL on a zero dividend versus what was proposed, which was 6 cents and then $1 in the end, so it was less around.
That's correct.
Yep, so in terms of this year, I think we've got $2 million projected dividend from TDHL, which is indicating will be met. And then you'll see in the statement of intent, it has been a status quo statement of intent pending us getting through strategic workshops and still maintained the $1 million thereafter. But as you see, that was originally budgeted based on 0 cents on the dollar. Share, and then the question is actually getting a little bit more upside. So yes, the outlook for Alpine is relevant in terms of what now is the outlook for Alpine.
Councillor Long, I know that's a good explanation. Thank you. Okay, well, would you like to move that we receive the report, Councillor Long?
I'm happy to.
Those in favour say aye. Aye. Okay, thank you. Just hold this draft statement of intent, page 64, 7.6.
So again, so in this, we're next one of the year where CCOs are presenting the draft statements of intent. The obligation for councillors to consider the draft, determine the feedback to be provided in order for them to produce a final statement of intent. So we've discussed this previously, and what we've, because TDHL have got the strategic workshops planned, one of which has already occurred. Their proposal was to continue largely the same statement of intent, us getting through those workshops and then reviewing. So essentially, if that's not able to be achieved before 30th of June, doing sort of a mid-year review of the statement of intent. And that's the basis upon which we've been proceeding with TDHL. So the statement of intent that they have provided is very much a status quo statement of intent pending that work being completed, but it's still open to the council to provide feedback. A couple of things I think that are relevant. There's an indication in the statement of intent around that there may be a review. I think we say, well, actually, there will be another review of the statement of intent because that's kind of what we've agreed to. And then I think maybe there's a question for TDHL around, we've sort of got the $1 million dividend maintained. Maybe there's a question around what is the, can the outlook around Alpine, is there an update to that? What's come through in Alpine statement of intent, for example, and is there any movement, potential for movement on that $1 million dividend? And then other things maybe for council to be considering, other things like what are the, and this might be for the next stage, statement of intent, but what are the sort of things that you want to make sure that you're capturing from a being informed point of view as a councillor? So currently, for example, major transactions have to go to the shareholder for approval, but their thresholds are quite high. We do get quite a good open dialogue with TDHL and review the workshops, but something to consider might be, for example, in the nature of a significant transaction, one of the sort of things that you'd want to be informed of, is there an approval requirement you want to include? So I think those are probably for the next stage. There's some things that we could be considering, so particularly around strategic exits.
I guess I'm a little disappointed that we actually haven't got a representative here of the College Company and that one mentioned tomorrow. It's appropriate that they should have been here at this meeting, presenting the report plus speaking to the statement.
think there's probably two ways of dealing with it. I guess them not being here gives us officers an opportunity to provide sort of good advice to the council. They've submitted their SOI, it's for us to consider, provide advice and then provide feedback. So I think there's sort of pros and cons each way, people here or not, but you should be able to, really you should be looking to us as officers to provide advice on the statement of intent, perhaps going back to statement to the HR.
So are you currently involved with the holdings company now?
I no longer do any work for the holdings company, but I'm responsible for their monitoring function.
Thank you. Okay, well, we have a motion that we accept, we're not accepting the draft statement.
I could suggest a motion.
Yes.
Essentially, I would say that, I think you put the draft statement of intent, just reinforcing that we'll get through the strategic workshops and then there'll be another review of the statement of intent that should be built into this draft. And just maybe a question to them around, can we give some, what is the outlook currently with Alpine and impact of that on the dividend for the statement of intent?
Okay. Move that statement. Second that. Stuart. Those in favour, say aye.
It's like your mum here, you can call Stuart all day. Huh?
Must be in trouble. Okay, we'll move on to the next item, which is our annual statement, 7.9, plus half-year report, 31st December, 104.
That's what I meant to be.
All right, look, thank you. So there's two parts here. One is the half-yearly report, which is presented to you. We'll talk shortly about the statement of intent. In terms of the half-yearly report, I'll take it as read and take any questions, but it is tracking as you would expect it to track, and I don't see any significant issues inside there for you. I think there's a summary set out in terms of the cover letter to it, but the forecast position at the moment is in line with the expectation.
Okay, any discussion on that? Everyone okay? On the councillor Pennington, would you like to move that? Councillor Wills has. Oh, okay. Barbara? Second, those favour, say aye. 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 Thank you. Moves us on to the draft statement of intent for the Evans.
Yes, so thank you, Mr. Chair. So as Donna Cross pointed out, this is the season for statement of intents, and so you've got one now from the Aotearoa State Trust, and I think the sort of most relevant point here, I think, is number 13, where the trustees are looking to undertake a review of the trust, its ownership and funding arrangements in relation to the building. And I think, and officers will support that, because in actual fact, one of the issues that the stadium has is that its deficit every year is in regard to funding this depreciation. And I think as trustees, it's prudent that they say, as the owners of that asset, that they say to council, there is an asset here, which is for the benefit of the community. We think it's time for us to have a look at that and ask what is the most appropriate mechanism and ownership of this. So they are seeking to do that over the years 1 to 3. That really, I think, is the sort of significant change from previous statements of intent, and officers will support that beginning review. They support the trustees in that, and then report back to the council. Take any other comments though, that again, as Donna Cross pointed out, we're thanking for that statement of intent, and note that they have raised that issue and report back what council's view is on that.
Okay. I'll move that report be accepted. Stu, second. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Okay, well, that moves us to